I recently had the misfortune of my first narcissist girlfriend, so here's what I learned and the red flags for you to watch out that I missed. I've had girlfriends with issues with drugs, alcohol, low esteem, bipolarism, and any combination of these things. But this was my first narcissist. I'm not a fan of overused labels like this, but by the end of the video, you'll understand why this particular subject actually warrants the term. There were red flags that I saw that I should have paid more attention to. There are other ones that I didn't see because I wasn't looking for them, because narcissists are good at what they do. I'm just going to refer to the subject as letter M to remain anonymous because this is a learning video, not a bashing video. The green flags that fooled me started with the first date. We had lunch downtown Austin, went to Barton Springs after that, dinner that night. The next day she made a casserole, came down to San Antonio, I barbecued for us, we went to the lake on the kayak, and she stayed the night and worked from here the next morning. We had a really good time together. She was intelligent, she was well-spoken, well-mannered, she was very open, direct, and honest in her communication, which is kind of rare these days. And I found myself really liking her, not just on the outside, but on the inside as well. One of the hooks that caught me right off the bat was the fact that she was willing to put in the time and effort to learn each other, learn more about each other, and see what we had in common or any concerns. And that alone is a huge deal, to be texting and calling every day and to be spending every weekend together just to learn each other and invest that time into what could be a relationship. And that's become fairly rare, as opposed to a lot of people that you meet someone new, they might send you a text a week, and it takes you a month to actually even get to meet them. Morally, we both agreed that honesty and trust are paramount, and cheating is unforgivable. And we both were into nerdy stuff like Star Wars and Greek mythology, and we just really had a good time just laughing together and having fun together. We spent a lot of time hanging at the pool in her backyard, just getting to know each other that first month. And then at the 1 month mark, I got us a night at the resort just up the street. So we had a nice little getaway for that to celebrate the little wins, which these days a month is a big deal. I helped her with things around her house, some of the new tech stuff as she started her new job, and it just felt like we were a couple and a team moving in the right direction for a future, for the most part. There were some red flags that I did notice. And when we meet somebody new, it's a balance, because we don't want to repeat mistakes that we've done in the past by ending up in the same position because we didn't look for the signs. The balancing part of that is that every person is new and they deserve a fair chance of being looked at for who they are today, not for their past and not for our past or how someone else treated us. So finding that balance is sometimes a trick, but I try to do a good job of that. The first red flag that I questioned is she superficial? She seemed like she was really focused on things like image, luxury, partying. Things weren't about necessarily the experience so much as how fancy was everything or how glamorous was it. She was horrified when I told her that Sunshine and I used to just split the bills down the middle. At the end of every month, I managed the finances. We'd have the list. We'd each pay our own half, and we never had to argue about money as a result of that. She said that she had always just had guys that she'd lived with that had just paid all the bills, but that she had contributed by doing things like paying for maid service. When she would meet a new coworker, instead of saying this person works really hard or this person is really nice, she would comment that this coworker was very pretty. And I couldn't quite understand why that was relevant in a work environment. She also commented about admiring some people that had become very successful in business and acquired a lot of wealth, even though they'd done it being a very awful person. Also, and granted, I don't even celebrate my own birthday, but when I saw her spend $3,000 for a pool party to celebrate herself getting a new job with bartender, caterer, hair and makeup person for her, 2 swimsuits so she could do a wardrobe change partway through the day, all these decorations, I was blown away. It's something I couldn't even conceptualize, but again, I'm different that way, so I didn't want to be judgy about it. Instead, I just helped and tried to support her and make sure she had fun at the party. The other red flag that came up was her drinking, particularly when she went to Cancun. Now, she'd invited me to go. This is very early on. I didn't have a valid passport, so I couldn't go. But she still texted and called from down there. We still kept in contact, But some of the behavior I was hearing about is something you would expect from a girl in her 20s at spring break, not a professional in her 40s. Now, it's no secret that I've drank a lot in my past. I haven't drank for over a year and a half now for health reasons, but I had to be really careful and look at it and say, am I stepping into another beautiful disaster and repeating mistakes of the past? Or is she just blowing off steam on this vacation before she starts her new job? And it's a little bump in the road, but it's not worth throwing away all the good about what we have right now. Going back to her pool party, by midnight that night, she was so drunk that she was falling asleep standing up. So I had to put her to bed, and the next day I cleaned up her vomit and the huge mess inside and outside the house while she laid in bed hungover. These events were all concerning, but again, it felt like we had a solid relationship where we were both making the investment in time and energy for each other, and we had great communication, great chemistry, the affection was there. It just felt like we had a lot of fun together, and we were always excited to see each other the next time. Then the true colors came out. Then it happened. One Sunday after she'd been drinking quite a while, she started acting kind of mean, and so I asked her about it, and that set off a chain reaction, and the next thing she was yelling at me, called me the wrong name, told me to get the F out of her house multiple times. I asked her if she really wanted that. She said yes, so I did, which instantly was met with some text as I was 10 minutes down the road saying it's over. Over the next week, I tried to respect her decision, but also offered to talk and say that it seems silly that we would throw what we have away over one little spat. I even sent her flowers thanking her for the 11 weeks that we'd spent together. When we finally did talk that next Friday, it was not to reconcile, and it was her blaming me for everything 100%. So I asked her if she thought maybe if she hadn't been drinking that day that we would still be together and happy. More anger, more defensiveness, and I asked her how she expected to have somebody care about her who would not have issue with her puking drunk in her 40s, and she said, easy, I don't want anybody to care for me, which was counter to what she'd said in the past. And she said this is why she always chooses guys that drink as much as her. When I brought up the concern about her being superficial, that put her over the edge. She hung up. Later that night, I was getting pictures of her that were clearly taken to update her dating profile, and more comments about how mad she still was about me calling her alcoholic and superficial. A couple days later on Labor Day is where I first got my taste of the real level of narcissism I was dealing with. She said that she was going to take the pictures of us and paste some other guy's face over my face, which tells me that she's being as deliberately hurtful as she can. No, she doesn't care now, and no, she didn't care the whole time. It's all a joke to her. Then she sends a video of her and some friends at the pool and says that she's telling them about how funny it is to her that I called her alcoholic and superficial, and that's material for their entertainment, and they're all getting a good laugh at it. Now, her friends know I'm right, but they're sure not going to say anything because they're getting their little pool parties and free booze. Why would they agree with me? But to be joking that much about the split 1 week after it happened and laughing with her friends about a guy actually caring about her and her never caring, that's just cold and soulless. Later that night, she tried to call and want to be friends, which again tells me that the whole thing never mattered. It was purely a transactional relationship in her mind. And the only reason she was trying to play nice was because she wanted help to try to fix one of her bubble makers. I was not going to remain her tech support system, and I told her after that day she was not somebody I would ever want to be friends with. We both agreed that we were best to not communicate moving forward, so I blocked her, and I'm sure she blocked me too. The red flags I missed, and this is where the real learning started happening. That Labor Day taught me a new perspective, let's say, on the whole thing, and just how diabolical this subject really was. I'd thought I had a girlfriend and we were working together as a team and looking at a future together and investing time in each other. Was not the case. She told me we'd work through bumps in the road, that's part of relationships. Clearly that was not what happened. But when I started learning a little bit more about narcissism, it all started to make a lot more sense. The first big flag I missed was the past relationship patterns. Now, I have to be careful with this because I've not always been a saint. So I have to be careful not to judge someone else for their past, but think about who they are today. Her ex-husband had cheated on her, and instead of just walking away at the divorce with, obviously he'd already found somebody new, he actually took the time to write a letter to her family talking about how awful of a person she was with the substance abuse, the personality, character, and her brother had actually taken the ex-husband's side in all this. Now, she explained how awful the ex-husband was and how awful the brother was and made herself to look like the victim. I didn't have a reason to doubt her, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt. She also let me read a letter from a more recent ex, which she described as she did a lot of guys of some dude I was fornicating for a couple months. Now, this letter was written by somebody that clearly had their own issues. It was pretty outlandish, pretty bitter. He'd even included a couple books with the letter, and one of them, you guessed it, was on narcissism. She made a big joke out of it, and so I thought the guy was really reaching at the time. She read another document one day off her phone that had this whole list of all these dudes she fornicated for a couple months and all these disasters that somehow she keeps ending up with multiple drug dealers in her list or multiple porn addicts or this dude cheated or whatever it was, making a joke about that as well, yet somehow, obviously, something's happening that she keeps ending up with these people, and it's always the guy's fault, and it's always her that breaks up with them. What I now realize is this awful pattern of her getting with a guy, leading him on to think there's something more than there really is with her, and then having an explosive blow up at the end, having him get furious with her, and ending up on her list. So she jokes about it, and the cycle repeats. I read the letter from the guy that called her a narcissist. I ignored the warning, and 3 months later, I'm the butt of a joke at her pool party, talking to her friends and her next flavor of the month. And that guy's gonna laugh at some dude she fornicated for a couple months, calling her alcoholic and superficial. And in 2-3 months, he's gonna have a palm print on his forehead, and he's gonna be the joke at the next pool party. The bigger one I struggle with, and here's why. She's what I would call a 0 to 60 girl. So right off the bat, she doesn't take it slow. She jumps in 60% of the relationship. And she's never actually capable of going to 100%. But the fact that she jumped in so quick versus taking these smaller steps that most people would do gives guys like me false hope that it's going somewhere. For example, she and I had talked early on about how actions speak louder than words. And when we jumped in, she did the actions, right? She was communicating all the time. She put the time and energy and effort into the relationship, it looked like. It was, everything from pet names. It was the intense sex. It was the, the affection, the having fun together. It felt like a real girlfriend to me. And so it motivated me to be the best boyfriend I could for her. And that's where the big gap was. When you look back now at how crystal clear she made it that none of it ever mattered, it does make sense if you think of it like this. Think about shaking someone's hand that you just met. Let's say you're at work, you shake their hand, you're trying to remember their name, but you don't feel anything, it's just a handshake. And that's how Em does these episodes. To her, it's all just a handshake. Having sex with a guy, holding hands, arm around each other, all the things that we think of as relationship indicators, to her is just a handshake with different body parts. So she doesn't actually feel anything about the situation. There's no actual connection, it's just conventional human behavior for that situation, no different than shaking a coworker's hand to her. And this is very different than how most of us view these different kind of behaviors. Most of us look at all those behaviors as a whole and say, oh, this is a relationship, we're connecting. And this is what gives her the leverage. She's able to use the relationship as a transactional arrangement to get orgasms, gifts, trips, favors, whatever she wants out of it, with no emotional investment. So when she's tired of it or ready to move on, then she just jumps ship. She doesn't have any hurt or sadness or anything like that to deal with. In fact, she actually is happy that she now has more joke material to tell her friends about. Feeling avoidance is also another thing that came through in her communication. Now, when it came to something sexual, she could be very graphic, communicate often about it, and we were able to talk about what would make it even better, try things, and move forward. We couldn't do that with the relationship, though. Because the relationship involves feelings, the sex was like a handshake to her. She could say her body part missed my body part, but you would almost never hear her actually say she missed me. In fact, you'd almost never see any kind of communication from her that was anything excitement about the relationship or Even complimentary, the most you might get is a handsome out of it, but there was really no originality or effort, and I just kind of thought she wasn't really good at it. But now that I more understand the situation, the reason you didn't hear that from her is because she didn't actually feel any of those things. I tried to make sure that when she was on travel, she knew that, yes, I missed the sex, but I also missed her because I didn't want her feeling like I only missed her because of the sex. And so I tried to find a balance of the two, but she wouldn't respond with anything close to it. The most you might get is me too or same. She literally responded once. But again, she didn't feel those things or anything for that matter, so it makes sense. In fact, she couldn't talk about feelings from the other way either. When we were having one of the last discussions, I said, just tell me you want me gone and you're going to be happier with me out of your life than in it, because that's the decision you're making, and I want you to make sure you understand what you're deciding here. And she refused to say it. She said, I'm not going to say those things. So there was actually zero commitment to feeling anything from her. Now, speaking of sex, at the time, there was no way to view it besides just being awesome. There was an obvious element of her trying to look like a porn star. In fact, at one time I said, I just want you to be my girlfriend. You don't have to try to be a porn star. And she said, well, that's what I'm trying to be like. Yes, she fell into some strange narrow band of somebody who wants to behave like a porn star, yet also be in a committed relationship. Then she sounded surprised when she talked about past relationships where she didn't respect herself, and then she was surprised when the guy didn't respect her either. We attract what we project. Now for some of the real evil genius of this girl through this whole experience. Her primary tool through all this was gaslighting, and she was a master of it. For example, her last night in Cancun, she went out to dinner with some other guy, and when I called her about it, she said flatly, I'm not committed to you, and if I want to fornicate somebody else, I will, and I'll tell you later. And the fact that she's being so direct and honest about it is almost, because it's so rare, it's almost distracting from the fact of how awful a person she is to say that in the first place. During the week of the breakup, there was zero accountability. Everything that happened was my fault, 100%. Never a bit of hers. One of the most ridiculous ones was the actual Sunday when it all blew up. It was never her fault for getting drunk and being a child about it and telling me to get the F out of her house. She made that my fault for not knowing the right way to handle her drunk. That was my fault. It's brilliant in its boldness when you think about it. Even the whole, a guy should pay for everything. If she didn't have much money, we would call her a gold digger or using a guy for money. But she has a really good job. So it sort of again distracts you from what's going on. Plus she said it's not about the money. It's because she believes in the traditional role of male and female roles, in male taking care of the family. Well, that's all fine and good, but it's not like she's staying home with the kids or something. She has a really good paying job too. So what it really, when you think about it, she just wants the guy to pay all the bills so that she has her whole salary to save what she wants and blow the rest on whatever, lashes, makeup, clothes, and partying. She was also very clever about laying groundwork for future attacks. For example, when I questioned her about just using the relationship for whatever orgasms, gifts, and favors she could get out of it, she said, well, I never asked for any of those. Now, to be fair, she did ask for a lot of the favors, especially helping with her pool party and all that, but she didn't ask for the orgasms. I mean, didn't have to, right? That's obvious. But she also didn't ask for the gifts. She would say that gifts are her love languages, and that's how she responds well, is that means a lot to her. And she would talk about all these things these other guys bought her and stuff, but she wouldn't ask for it, so that when I kind of threw it back at her, she could say, hey, I didn't ask for that, you did that on your own. And she was exactly right, because I was doing what I thought was being a good boyfriend. I was just getting used. She was diabolically clever at this technique. And you could tell she'd been doing it for years because you could never really pin her down. She always had this way of casting some shadow of a doubt. She was like a gaslighting Jedi. As I thought through this, there were some things that came up that I thought might be narcissistic inconsistencies. But as I thought more through them, maybe I just had to look a little deeper and think more about how a narcissist's mind really works. She had just enough virtue signaling peppered into her conversations to try to make her look like a better person than she really was. She'd mentioned going to church once in a while, but then that was followed by fun day Sunday drinking all day. She'd mentioned caring about her parents or her other extended family members, but did she really care about them? She did make a comment once about how a guy's behavior that she's dating also reflects on her. So even for the times where it looked like she cared about me, I'm assuming now that it was just selfishly motivated, that she just wanted me to be better so that she could look better. Yet for someone so concerned about her image, the first week of her new job, she called me bragging that she drank more than anybody at the table at her first big business meeting. Jealousy. She did exhibit a little jealousy a couple times, which I thought was actually nice in that, oh, she cares. But the more you understand about the narcissist, the more you realize it probably wasn't so much that she actually cared about, the threat of losing me, so much as a narcissist has to be better than everyone else. So this threat that somebody else might be taking what's hers is most likely what actually motivated that reaction. Complimenting me to her friends. This was a strange one because, as I mentioned earlier, she was, she just didn't really compliment me or say much that didn't involve sex as far as any of that stuff goes, nothing about the relationship in that. But she would tell me that while she was talking to her friends, she bragged about the trip to Jupiter orgasm I gave her and the fact that we could talk for 2, 3, even 4 hours at night and had great conversations and how much better that was than dating. And I thought it was nice at the time, but now looking back, understanding more about the narcissist, again, she has the need to feel better than everybody else. So while she's with her friends who's stuck in a dull marriage or who's on the awful dating scene right now, she could sound better than them by having a boyfriend that actually, we did have good sex and we did have good conversation and we had all these things and we did fun stuff together. So again, the reason for all that was so that she could feel better than everybody else around her. The second porn addict she dated, maybe even engaged to, seemed to actually make kind of a mess of her. And this one didn't quite add up to me. She'd always point out how head over heels she was for that guy and how great they connected. And because of that, she gave him a pass for all these awful things he did. But when I'd ask about the awful things that she had complained about, she would say he treated her like a queen, which I can only assume meant buy her a lot of stuff or pay for everything. But then he also asked for a bunch of the stuff back when they broke up. She let so much slide with that guy until he finally lied about the fact that he was still fornicating himself with his own tears as lube to Instagram porn stars way more in a day than he was fornicating her. So the question is, if she's so unfeeling, why did that particular case hurt her so bad that she started fornicating some drug dealer half her age to get over the guy? But remember, narcissists need to have this image that they're better than everybody else. So is it because she felt rejected because he was sort of choosing these porn stars on Instagram over her? And maybe that's also why she tends to act the way she does? Or was an alcoholic porn addict that treated her that way the only person sick enough that she could actually connect with to that level to actually feel something? In a similar but much lesser manner, why did she care when I left that night after she told me to get the F out? She clearly wasn't upset to lose me. That's what she wanted, apparently. But maybe because I actually left when she told me to get the F out, instead of sitting there begging her to keep me, made her feel rejected for a change. And that's why she got so angry about it. Another thing that didn't make sense is in our last exchange, she made a comment about how after I'd called her alcoholic and superficial, she blocked me. And then she unblocked me for some reason, and she said she wished she'd never read the text that came after Dripping Springs. That text was nothing mean. In fact, what I actually said in that text was, hey, despite all the hurt this week, I still miss my best friend. I still would like to be your boyfriend. I still think we can make this work, and it seems a shame to throw it away. And I'm still would take you back in a heartbeat if you're willing to talk about it. Now, a heartbeat may have been a stretch because we both would have had to really sit there and say, we want this, we're willing to put our swords away and move forward, which should have been perfectly reasonable for any normal couple, especially as well as we communicated, not knowing exactly what I was dealing with at the time. But I still thought it strange that of all the communication that we'd had that she'd been upset about, why was that text that was actually nice and complimentary and still trying to be hopeful, why was that the text that she wished she'd never seen? Now remember, a narcissist is ultimately driven by insecurity. She told me about many times where she would drink so much that she would basically cry and feel sorry for herself being alone. So is it really the feeling of loneliness that's bothering her in those cases? Or is it just some kind of anger because she doesn't feel like she's better than everybody else if she doesn't have some guy fawning over her, following her around, paying her bills? I don't know that I'd go so far as to think that she actually realizes she's doing it to herself, because that would be accountability, and that's not part of the recipe for the narcissist. The lessons at the end of the day: drinking was a problem, but that's a separate issue, so I'm going to remove that from the equation. I really should have paid more attention to the past relationship patterns. That was the big red flag that I failed to recognize. As far as how she acted like my girlfriend but never actually felt anything, I don't know that I could have done anything differently. Maybe I could have. Maybe I just saw what I wanted to see. For all these things, in the superficial aspect, I should have asked more questions earlier to better understand and hopefully learn exactly what I was dealing with. The problem is that most narcissists lie, and they're good at it. I don't necessarily think she would have directly lied, but she also knows how to paint the picture to her advantage. I want to take the learnings, but I don't want to become jaded. I still want to treat each person as a new individual and look at them for who they are today. Yes, we can look for those red flags to make sure we don't repeat mistakes before, and if we have questions, then we just calmly and respectfully ask those questions to make sure that we understand the situation better. Like many people that go through this experience, yes, of course I'm not happy with myself for falling for the act, but I'd rather stay optimistic and hopeful and positive than ending up cold and heartless like them. At the point of her suggesting that we be friends so that she could get tech support from me, I realized something else about her. She really doesn't offer any value as a person in my life. Almost everything she does is focused on superficial stuff like image and partying. Hours of watching makeup videos on TikTok or watching football or whatever else is an excuse to drink. The only thing she actually tries on in life is her job, which she takes very serious, but even admits that's just an end to making more money to be able to do more partying or other superficial activity. The narcissist spends so much energy convincing the world around them that they're better than everybody else as a pure distraction of how shallow they really are. We all know there's no value in being bitter. Sunshine taught me how great a relationship could be at a time where I would not have normally been open to it. And maybe I hope that I could do the same thing for M. It's good to look back at the experience objectively, understand what we dealt with, what we learned, and be able to move forward knowing that we have a better chance of finding happiness than these people. Be a good person, stay a good person, and keep good people in your life. Get bad people out of your life and keep them out of your life. Our time is too precious to do anything else.
Subscribe to my YouTube channel below and let's celebrate turning fuel and air into adrenaline.